So I thought we'd just go through these
Sure.
questions again. A conversation just like this.
All right.
Ignore the camera; it's not here. No right answers, no wrong answers. It's all
Okay.
going to be edited, so you
All
can
right.
pick up on things, have fun with it, and we'll just talk.
All
Okay,
right.
great. So first, a basic question: why the Grand National? What was the initial spark or idea or impetus that set Buick off to develop this car?
Well, the to answer that, I'll give you just sort of a little bit of the scene back in those days. Buick had a reputation, and this is post World War II, but it wasn't. We had a reputation that was not one of a lot of the sportier reputation we had way back when we were in racing. So this is now at 72, 73, 74, along that time, and all of a sudden, Buick is doing well. Buick is putting in all kinds of volume. They were running, I think, 73, they ran around 800,000 units. And then comes 74, and now we have a major crisis, the oil embargo. All of a sudden now, going from 900,000 a year, Buick, the following year, 74, something like that, they sold 400,000. The New York Times had pictures of they call them the boat, and the Buick image then became one of, a little bit like the Hummer became here this 3 years ago. It was something that demonstrates total lack for the environment and concern. So that was in 73, 74. So now you got your facilities, half of them are idle. So they put in then, they being the corporation, decided that they're going to make some radical changes in the Buick organization. So Bob Berger was brought in from outside, not outside the corporation, outside of Buick, brought in as general sales manager for Buick. Roy Bentz was brought in as the chief financial officer for Buick. Dave Collier was brought in as a general manager of Buick. And then I was brought in as a chief engineer of Buick. All of us were from within GM, but not within Buick. So now the stage is set. We're going to have to make a major change in Buick's image to recover from this tremendous shock here, energy shock. So we gathered together. Now, meanwhile, Buick had been working on looking at ways. Everybody knew somewhere along the line the energy is going to be a major issue. So they've been looking at ways of improving, reducing weight, things like that. So that was already in place, but wasn't focused on really making a transition here that was a major step. So we had to put together what are we going to do, and so the challenge then was so huge that we said, well, part of the corporation, the corporation will have to be downsizing here, reducing the size. That's part of it, but that can't be all of it. And so what we're going to do at Buick here, then the two key items were we're going to go in and develop our styling theme that is a younger theme, doesn't appeal to the doctor. Instead, it's a younger theme, major emphasis on technology. So that styling, technology, was specifically on technology, and bringing forth the V6, because that when the team started looking at where to go, they were already looking at the old V6 that they had made that was down with American Motors down in Toledo. And so the prior team, before we got there, was looking at how about getting the V6. Well, then now you got this urgency. So the V6 team then, the engineering team, went down, took a look at the facilities, and they had done a good job of putting it in storage and doing a good job of making sure that it was not storage where everything rusted up. So they then, here we are now, we got this major crisis, tremendous, V6 got tremendous potential, because the general public will then say, hey, listen, this is not the same Buick, you're going to put a V6 engine. And of course we alienated some of the old customers. So we went out and they did this in less than 200 days. And normally it takes a year and a half to do that. So it was just unbelievable what the engineering and manufacturing team did to get the V6 put together. So now you got a V6 engine now that can be used. It was so flexible, that we could use it in almost every product we had without major redesign. So then as we get Now, we need something fast. The V6 is in production. This is 75, it starts going in production. So now there are different ways. We have to provide unique vehicles here that demonstrate these two themes here. Major emphasis on technology and major emphasis on youth and the attractive styling. So that's sort of the scene. Now, there are a lot of different ways that we reinforce that. Bob Berger brought in the Hawk. That's the symbol that you saw a lot of Hawks in Buick commercials, and so that was a very key element on the development. The V6 now was another very key element that was now being put into many different products. And so we had some of these specialty cars that were easy to do with just paint jobs. One that was another important one was that we went in and really made the little Skyhawk. It was really a car for young people. And then we came along when we did the corporate version of the Regal, which was 1978. The design staff did an outstanding job of putting together a styling on that car that had appeal to the youth. So it really segmented. Here, Oldsmobile been going along very well. We came in, and that Buick Regal just sort of cleaned house on everybody. So that was another important element on that same theme. So putting the V6 engine in the Buick, and now there already had been arrangements made to have it in the Indy car, and that was by George Elders, the predecessor, the general manager. He was working on in fact, he did have a V6 lined up, but it wasn't the first Buick Regal that was the pace car was a V8. And so when we got there, the guy says, wouldn't that be a bold statement to have a first pace car as a V6? Made the announcement. The dealers, some of the more progressive dealers, were ecstatic, and some of the others said, "Oh no, it's not Buick." So, but we went ahead and did it, and the development of that then said to the racing world, "Hey, listen, this kind of performance. You're getting this kind of performance out of a V6. Demonstrates Buick's got the technical capacity to do this." And so, as we brought that on stream, that pace car, and told the world we'll have a V6 engine in it, first one, that was another very bold statement. And that was sort of leading in. Now you got the car, you got the engine, and then we're starting to get into racing. And so it performed, the Regal did very well in NASCAR. And so we ended up, Chevrolet normally, if Chevrolet or Ford normally got the manufacturer's trophy. And I've forgotten what year it was, but Buick got it then about, I guess it was the late 70s, something like that. It was before the Grand National. The late 70s, we actually got the manufacturer trophy. And so go to New York at the annual NASCAR banquet at the Waldorf, and we accept the first manufacturer's trophy for Buick. Another one of those signs that Buick is changing their product line. And the styling staff just did an outstanding job. Then you had the Regal, and then the following year we came along with what was called at that time the Skylark. And so we had a Skyhawk, which was a small, and we had a Skylark. But another outstanding job in the styling of it. It was a small, very small car for Buick, and it was off of the X-Car power chassis. But we ended up, they did such a good job of getting a classic look. And so some of the advertising themes were, it's the classic Buick at their size for a young family. So that was another. Now this is all leading up to it was before we had the Grand National idea. So then, as sort of these various things fell into place, the advertising, styling, extremely important, the V6 engine, and then there's work being done on the turbocharger. And then in 1978, we introduced the limited edition turbocharger in the Regal with a domed hood, and along with the turbocharger, which was a lot of technology stuff, but we also eliminated the distributor. So first year, any major manufacturer got rid of the distributor. Another major demonstration that we were for real. And then by now, we knew we had to do more than just have pace cars. So Herb Fischel, who worked for me at Chevrolet when I was there, and Herb ran Chevrolet's performance division. I convinced Herb to come up to Buick and start a performance division within Buick division, and he did that. And so he brought some key people in. They start developing higher performance V6 engine, and along with that, then the turbocharger took that Regal and moved the volume even higher. Not because they were additional turbochargers, but it had an image. And then we had spin-offs off of that same kind of theme. That, all right, you're a pretty cool person if you buy a Regal, even if it's not turbocharged. So again, the advertising agencies did a good job of basically demonstrating and advertising the point that the turbo was a gymnast, whereas a lot of the other performance vehicles were truly muscle cars. This is the difference. You had the power and the performance when you needed. Power on demand is what we said. Power on demand, and yet you can drive at highway speeds here and get over 20 miles per gallon, which was a lot in those days. And so that was another one of these things. Well, it's different, but it's different in a positive way. It's a move up on that whole technology theme. So now, after we run and win a manufacturer trophy in NASCAR, and we're very successful winning NASCAR races, design staff then, and Herb Fischel, a performance area, and then this gentleman named Molly. They were working on, all right, how do we really do something now with this where the NASCAR, Chevrolet just dominated the image, and Chevrolet and Ford dominated the image of NASCAR. So then Herb and his team and design staff and Molly all worked together. What kind of a vehicle could we put together that really demonstrates the NASCAR image? They developed a beautiful V6 turbo. It was a beautiful color, but it was also beautiful design of the V6 turbo. So that was all part of that package. So now we're getting all set here now to do something radically different that should not only increase the Regal sales, but it also demonstrates that Buick has a technical capability to be developing these other things. And so this was put together, and at the first showing down we had two showings. One of them was up in Flint, and the other one was down at the design staff, but the first one was the design staff. So we come in and we take a look at it, and shock, it's red. And I remember saying that, oh, red is, that's a beautiful car, but red is not Buick, it's Chevrolet. You got every Corvette, everybody thinks Corvette, it's always a red Corvette. And so, design staff, and Steve was one of I think Steve, he may have actually put the next one together, I think. And so Steve Pastner, who was head of that design studio at that time, came back with this, the silver and black theme with a thin red stripe in the right places and stuff. And when we went down to look at that, just a couple went down. You can't have too many. This is not a popularity contest, but Berger loved it. I liked it. In fact, the design studios, they really loved it. So all right, let's do that. So we go ahead and we get everything together. Well, now we want to use the Grand National name. We don't have it. So Bill France Sr. and I were friends, but Bill France Jr., Bill was the same age I was, and so we knew each other a lot better than I knew Bill Sr. So I called him and told him that, what we're working on here, and we want to use the Grand National name. I said, but we got to work out something. I said, this is, we can't really pay royalties on this thing for a long time. That we aren't going to make that many. So anyway, he said, well, how many are you going to make? Well, I'm not sure. Probably. I said, I don't really know. It's maybe 2,000 to 10,000, something like that. And so he said, all right, well, listen, you send them out. So anyway, the guys went down and talked to his people and stuff and looked at the car, And, of course, the Grand National just started, the timing was good because the Grand National was just starting to get going here and down there. And so Bill called and said, well, listen, why don't you just go ahead and do that? And so we did. And the volumes never, we didn't intend to make this a high volume car, so they ran in that 2,000 or 3,000 range, something like that. I think we had 1 or 2 years where it went to 15,000, something like that. But it really worked out being a win-win situation. And so the timing was very important because it basically demonstrated all of those things that we've been advertising about what Buick is today, that the innovation that's there, the technology that's there, and obviously the styling that is there. So it comes in, and the dealers love it, and they couldn't get enough of them. So that's sort of how the environment really drove the product.
Mm-hmm. And to go back, how dire was the business situation? You talked about that sales figure drop year to year. Can you just explain or talk about briefly how dire was the situation from a business standpoint?
Oh, well, see, we went in 1 year. Buick went from around, I don't know the exact, but over 800,000 a year, and we had aspirations where you always build on that, and so the aspirations for this would have been 1973, I guess, and then the aspirations were always for something more than. The next year you come in and you're running at about 400,000. So you cut that in half. And so Buick Motor Division in those days was within GM. It was the largest single facility, all integrated into one area of any place in GM except Opel. Opel's Rüsselsheim facility was larger. So Buick made everything from engines to transmissions to fabricating the front end, the front end sheet metal. The bodies were made at Fisher, which was right next door there, but it was in Flint too. So it was really it was really a catastrophe. I mean, this thing really was just, we couldn't. They worked when they get that V6 going into production. That to do that in less than 200 days. They ran through all the holidays, Christmas, whatever it was. So there was this attitude, and we tried to use some of the Buick was an important part of World War II, and there's a lot of people there that remember those days when they converted over to tanks. They built some tanks, so there was that kind of an attitude. Well, listen, we've done it before, we'll be able to do it again, and so the engine was that urgency was a most impressive demonstration.